King Doyan walked slowly through the great hall of his palace on Zarian Prime. The morning light from the twin suns made the crystal walls shine like diamonds. He had ruled the great hegemony for 30 years, and every day still felt like a gift. 12 star systems lived in peace under his rule, something his father had only dreamed of achieving. My king called General Minho as he entered the throne room. His boots clicked on the polished stone floor as he bowed deeply. I bring good news from the outer worlds. Doyan settled into his throne, carved from a single piece of starstone that had taken craftsmen 5 years to complete. The throne was beautiful, but he had never cared much for its beauty. What mattered was what it represented: unity among the stars. "Tell me, old friend," the king said with a warm smile. Minho opened his datapad and read from the glowing screen. "The Valiant silk trade has grown by 40% this quarter. Merchants are calling it the most profitable season in their history. Even the Korth and Villani have stopped fighting over the mining rights on Kepler 442b. The king's eyes brightened. Those two species had been at war for over a century before his mediation protocols had finally brought them together. They agreed to share the mining operations. "Yes, Your Majesty. Both sides signed the treaty yesterday. They even agreed to build a joint research station on the planet's largest moon." Ambassador Nari glided into the room, her aquatic suit allowing her to move gracefully despite being on dry land. The Thalassans were one of the most peaceful species in the hegemony. Nari had served as their representative for nearly a decade. "Your Majesty," she said in her melodic voice, "the cultural exchange programs continue to exceed all expectations. We now have Thalassan students learning reptilian architecture on Vega 7, while young Chiroptorans study Nebulan light poetry. In the Andromeda sector, Doyan rose from his throne and walked to the great window that looked out over the capital city. The streets below buzzed with activity. He could see a group of crystalline silicates trading with scaled reptilians near the fountain. Gaseous nebulans floated overhead, their bodies pulsing with colorful lights as they communicated with a cluster of insectoid chiropterans. "Look at them," the king said softly. 30 years ago, half these species would not even speak to each other. Now, their children play together in our schools. His chief advisor Jinwoo approached, carrying a stack of reports. "The monument construction projects are proceeding on schedule, Your Majesty. By next year, every major world in the hegemony will have a memorial to unity. Future generations will learn about your peaceful revolution." Doyan nodded, but something in his expression grew thoughtful. "Sometimes I wonder if we truly earned this peace, Jinwoo. It seems almost too perfect, too easy." "Your Majesty speaks with the wisdom of a true leader," Jinwoo replied. "But surely you do not doubt the path you have chosen. The trade agreements, the cultural exchanges, the diplomatic solutions to ancient conflicts, these are your achievements." The king turned back to face his advisors. In the afternoon light, his weathered face showed the weight of 3 decades of leadership. His hair had turned silver, and lines creased his eyes, but his gaze remained sharp and kind. "I built this peace through understanding, not conquest," he said firmly. "Every treaty was negotiated. Every alliance was earned through trust. Every conflict was resolved through compromise. This is how civilized beings should behave. Forward. The other species respect you, Your Majesty. They see you as the great unifier. Children across 7 star systems learn your name before they learn their own history." As the afternoon meeting continued, King Doyan listened to reports from across his domain. Agricultural worlds reported record harvests. Industrial planets hummed with productive activity. The great trade routes that connected distant stars carried more goods than ever before. Even the frontier worlds, those dangerous places at the edge of known space, had grown quiet and peaceful. Yet something nagged at the king's mind. In quiet moments, he sometimes wondered about the early days of the hegemony before his grandfather's time. The official histories spoke of gradual expansion and peaceful integration, but they were strangely vague about certain details. When the court session ended, Doyan dismissed his advisors and walked alone to his private chambers. The palace grew quiet as evening approached. Servants moved through the halls, lighting the crystal formations that would glow softly through the night. In his study, Surrounded by books and star charts, the king poured himself a cup of Altarian wine and sat in his favorite chair. His window, he could see the lights of the city stretching to the horizon. Somewhere beyond those lights lay the royal archives, their sealed sections and forgotten records. He had never felt the need to explore those dusty old files. The present was what mattered, the peace he had built, the prosperity he had, fostered the unity he had created among the stars. But tonight, for reasons he could not explain, King Do-Yan found himself thinking about the past and wondering what secrets might be buried in the darkness between the stars. Captain Soman checked her scanner for the third time as her ship approached Mining Station Zeta-7. The readings made no sense. All systems showed green power flowing, life support active. Even the coffee makers in the break rooms were still warm. But her bioscanners detected no life signs at all. "Command, this is Survey Team Delta," she spoke into her communicator, trying to keep her voice steady. "We have reached the mining station, but something is very wrong here." Back on Zarian Prime, General Minho sat in the command center, surrounded by glowing screens and worried officers. Static filled the communication channel before Summon's voice came through clearly. "What do you mean wrong, Captain?" Minho asked, leaning closer to the speaker. "Sir, there is nobody here. The entire station is running perfectly, but all 847 workers have disappeared. The machines are still digging. The lights are on, and I can see half-eaten sandwiches on the tables, but every single person is gone." Minho felt a chill run down his spine. This was the 7th report like this in just 2 months. He looked at the large star map on the wall, where red markers showed the locations of the empty facilities. Pattern was becoming clear and frightening. "Captain, search the station completely," he ordered. "Look for any signs of struggle, any clues about what happened to the workers." "Already done, sir." "No broken windows, no damaged equipment, no blood, no bodies. It looks like everyone just stopped what they were doing and walked away. Even the security cameras showed nothing unusual until suddenly they are just recording empty rooms." Admiral Hyman walked over to the star map, her face pale with worry. She had served in the Hegemony fleet for 25 years and had never seen anything like this. The red markers formed a line moving from the outer edge of their territory toward the center, toward the heart of their civilization. "Could this be some kind of disease?" asked Colonel Wanho, joining them at the map. "Maybe a virus that makes people lose their minds and wander off?" Dr. Yunji, the head scientist for the Hegemony, shook her head firmly. "I have tested air samples from 3 different empty stations. No harmful bacteria, no deadly gases, no radiation poisoning. Whatever happened to these people, it was not caused by any natural disaster or biological weapon." The doctor pulled up her test results on a nearby screen. "The strangest thing is that everything looks normal. The food is fresh, the air is clean. The machinery works perfectly. It is as if the people simply decided to leave, all at the same time, without taking anything with them." Meanwhile, in his private study high in the royal palace, King Do-Yun read through the reports with growing fear. Each empty station was like a piece of a puzzle he did not want to solve. The pattern was too organized to be random, too widespread to be an accident. He had built his reign on peace and understanding. But now something unknown was moving through his territory like a silent storm. His advisors kept telling him there was no real threat, but the king's instincts told him otherwise. A soft sound from the corner of his study made him look up. From the shadows stepped Keeper Sang-hoon, one of the ancient archivists who served as living libraries for the Hegemony. His species could live for thousands of years, and their minds could store incredible amounts of information. "Your Majesty," Sang-hoon said, his multiple eyes blinking slowly, "I must speak with you about these disappearances. I believe I know what is happening." The king set down his reports and gave the old keeper his full attention. "Tell me what you know, old friend." Sang-hoon moved closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "In the deepest parts of the royal archives, there are very old records. Most people have forgotten about them, but I remember. They speak of events from before the Hegemony was founded, from the time before." "What kind of events?" mentioned something they call the sleeping giant, a force that once moved between the stars but then went quiet for centuries. According to these records, this giant had a pattern of behavior. It would take people without violence, without leaving traces, always moving in the same direction. King Doyan felt his heart beating faster. And you think this sleeping giant has awakened? Before Sang-hoon could answer, General Minho burst into the study without knocking. Your Majesty, I must interrupt. Keeper Sung-hoon has been filling the archive staff with wild stories about ancient monsters. These superstitions are causing panic among our people. Perhaps it is time for him to retire. Sang-hoon's eyes dimmed with sadness, but he bowed respectfully to the king. I have served the royal family for 800 years, Your Majesty. I would not speak of such things if I did not believe them to be true. The old keeper gathered his robes and walked slowly toward the door. As he reached the threshold, he turned back one last time. The pattern is moving inward, Your Majesty, toward the heart of our civilization. Whatever is coming, it will reach us soon. After Sang-hoon left, King Doyan sat alone in his study, staring at the reports spread across his desk. By the end of the month, 23 more facilities had been found empty. Their workers vanished like smoke in the wind. Technician Jisoo stared at her screen in complete shock. The numbers made no sense. Her detection equipment was showing massive objects moving through space, but they were coming from a direction that should have been empty. She checked her instruments twice, then called to her commander. Sir, Commander. Tien, you need to see this right now, she said, her voice shaking with excitement and fear. Commander Tien walked quickly to her station. He had been running Hegemony Station Omega for 15 years and had seen every kind of space phenomenon. Asteroids, comets, solar storms, even the occasional pirate ship. But when he looked at Jisoo's screen, his mouth fell open. What am I looking at? He asked quietly. Jisoo touched her control panel, and a three-dimensional image appeared in the air above them. It showed hundreds of ships moving in perfect formation through space. Each ship was enormous, much larger than even the biggest. Hegemony warships. Their hulls were dark and covered with strange markings that seemed to move and change as they watched. Where did they come from? Taeyeon demanded. That is the strangest part, sir. They're coming from the Sol system, but our records show that. Place has been dead for over 300 years. No life, no cities, no technology, just an empty yellow star with a few rocky planets. The commander studied the display more carefully. The fleet was moving steadily toward hegemony space, and their formation was too perfect to be accidental. These ships were under intelligent control, and they had a clear destination in mind. Try to contact them, he ordered. Use all communication frequencies. For the next hour, Jisoo sent messages in every known language and on every possible channel. The mysterious fleet ignored all attempts to communicate. They simply continued their approach, getting closer to hegemony territory with each passing minute. Then, without warning, every communication device in the station began broadcasting the same signal at once. The main screen flickered to life, showing the image of a being that looked almost familiar. He stood upright on two legs like many species in the galaxy, but there was something different about him. His features were smooth and symmetrical, and his eyes held an intelligence that seemed both ancient and patient. I am Kiwoo, the figure said in a clear, strong voice. I speak for humanity, the children of Earth. Commander Taeyeon felt a chill run through his body. Humanity was just a word from old stories, not a real species. But this being continued speaking, and his words sent ice through the commander's veins. Children of the galaxy, we are the descendants of those you tried to destroy. We are the survivors of the Great Cleansing, the genocide that your hegemony has tried to erase from history. The transmission was being broadcast across all of hegemony space. On Zarian Prime, alarms began ringing in the royal palace. King Do-yeon was pulled from his dinner and rushed to the command center, where Admiral Hyman and General Minho were staring at the screen in horror. Kiwoo's image filled the room as he continued his message. For 300 years, we have rebuilt our strength. We've remembered every crime committed against our people. They've prepared for this day when the scattered children of Earth would return home. The king felt his legs grow weak. Great cleansing? Genocide. These words meant nothing to him, but the certainty in the human's voice suggested they meant everything. From our home, we now come forth to reclaim what was stolen from us, Kiwu said. We come to settle debts that were written in the blood of our ancestors. The sleeping giant has awakened, and we have not forgotten. The transmission ended, but the fleet continued moving toward the heart of hegemony space. Their ships were so large they blocked out the stars behind them, creating moving shadows across the galaxy. "What is he talking about?" Admiral Hyman whispered. "Great cleansing? I have never heard of any such event." King Doyen's hands were shaking as he walked to the archive access terminal. His fingers fumbled with the controls as he entered his highest security codes. The ones that would open files from his great-grandfather's time, records that had been sealed for generations. "Your Majesty," General Minho said carefully, "surely these are just the ravings of some extremist group. Our history shows no record of any species called humanity." But as the ancient files began to open on the king's screen, his face went pale. Document after document appeared, each one more horrifying than the last. Reports of military operations against human colonies. Orders for the complete destruction of human settlements. Lists of human ships hunted down and destroyed. The words "final solution" appeared again and again in the files. Complete extinction was another phrase that kept coming up. His great-grandfather had not been the peaceful founder of the hegemony. That history claimed it had been something much darker. King Doyan sank into a chair as the truth crashed down on him. His golden age of peace had been built on the bones of an entire species. The humans had been murdered, their worlds destroyed, their children killed to prevent any possibility of revenge. But some had survived. Some had escaped to rebuild in the darkness between the stars. Now they had returned, stronger than ever. With ships that dwarfed anything the hegemony possessed, the sleeping giant had indeed awakened, and it remembered everything. King Doyan's hands shook as he pressed his palm against the ancient scanner. The deep vault beneath the royal palace had been sealed for over 100 years. Even his own father had never entered this place. The heavy doors slowly opened with a grinding sound that echoed through the stone corridors. Inside the vault, rows of data crystals glowed softly in the darkness. Holographic projectors covered in dust waited to reveal secrets that had been hidden for generations. The king walked slowly between the storage units, his footsteps the only sound in the tomb-like silence. The first file he opened made his stomach turn. Project Extinction was written in his great-grandfather's own handwriting. Below it, another document titled Final Solution to the Human Problem. King Doyan had to sit down as he read the horrible details. His great-grandfather, the man history called the Great Unifier, had been a monster. The document showed a carefully planned campaign to wipe out every single human in the galaxy, not because humans were evil or dangerous, but because they were too successful. The humans had been spreading across the stars, building colonies and making friends with other species. They learned quickly, adapted to new worlds easily, and their population grew fast. The other species had become afraid that humans would eventually become too powerful to control. So, they had decided to kill them all. The king read report after report of human worlds being destroyed from space. Families burned alive in there. Homes, refugee ships hunted down like animals and blown apart. Even human children had been murdered to make sure none would survive to seek revenge. The official reports called it pest control and maintaining galactic balance. But King Doyon could see the truth. It had been cold-blooded murder on an unimaginable scale. "Your Majesty?" General Minho's voice made him jump. The general stood in the doorway of the vault looking worried. "I have urgent news about the human fleet." Doyan looked up with tears in his eyes. "What news?" "They have reached the Kyrian system, but they are not attacking our forces there. Instead, they are ... recruiting people. The missing colonists from the empty stations, they were not kidnapped. They joined the human fleet willingly." The king felt the world spinning around him. "What do you mean, sir?" "It appears that some humans survived the events from 3 centuries ago. They had been hiding among our populations, pretending to be other species, waiting for this day. Dr. Yunji rushed into the vault, her face pale with shock. Your Majesty, we have been monitoring the human fleet's communications. Many of their ships are filled with people from our own colonies. Humans who have been living secret lives for generations, keeping their true identity hidden from us. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place in King Doyun's mind. The empty mining stations, the lack of any signs of struggle, the perfect timing of the disappearances. It had not been an invasion at all. It had been a homecoming for 300 years. Human survivors had been scattered throughout hegemony space, hiding among other species, pretending to be something they were not. They had been waiting, watching, preparing for the day when their people would return from Earth. When the Great Fleet had arrived, these hidden humans had simply walked away from their jobs and their false lives to join their true family. That was why the stations had been left running, why the meals had been left half-eaten on the tables. The humans had finally been able to go home. Commander Yemen of the Royal Guard entered the vault with more news. Your Majesty, the human. Leader Kiwu has landed on Zarian Prime. He has only a small group with him, and they carry no weapons. He says he wishes to meet with you. What does he want? The king asked quietly. He says he comes not as a conqueror, but as a judge. So it's Oz. To discuss the crimes of the past and the future of our people. King Doyen slowly closed the horrible files and stood up from his chair. His golden age of peace, his 30 years of bringing harmony to the galaxy, had all been built on a foundation of bones. The prosperity and unity he was so proud of had been purchased with the blood of innocent people. The humans had not returned for conquest or revenge. They had returned for justice. And now he, the descendant of the man who had tried to wipe them from existence, would have to face their judgment. As he walked toward the throne room where Kiwu waited, King Doyon knew that his reign was over. The age of hidden secrets and buried crimes was ending. Reckoning had finally begun, and there would be no escape from the truth. The sleeping giant had awakened. It was time to answer for the sins of the past. The great throne room had never been so crowded or so quiet. Representatives from dozens of different species filled the vast chamber, but no one spoke above a whisper. They had all come to witness something that had never happened before in the history of the hegemony. A king facing judgment from those his ancestors had tried to destroy. King Doyan stood in the center of the room, but he no longer wore his royal robes or his golden crown. He looked like any ordinary man, dressed in simple clothes, his face showing the weight of terrible knowledge. Across from him stood Kiwu, the leader of the human fleet that had appeared from the darkness between stars. Kiwu was smaller than many had expected, carried no weapons, and wore plain clothing that could have belonged to any trader or merchant. But when he spoke, his voice filled the entire room with quiet authority that made even the most powerful. "Admiral, stand straighter, Your Majesty," Kiwu said. His words clear and calm. "You have ruled in peace for 30 years. Your people call you a great king. But the peace you built was constructed on top of graves that were hidden from view. That is not true peace. That is simply justice that has been delayed." Behind Kiwu stood a woman named Minji, carrying several glowing data cores in her arms.
Ow.
She was the chief keeper of human history, and those data cores contained 3 centuries of memories that the hegemony had tried to erase. King Doyen's voice was barely audible when he replied, "I knew nothing about the crimes my ancestors committed until yesterday. I thought my great-grandfather was a hero who brought peace to the galaxy. Not knowing about evil does not make you innocent of it," Kiwu answered, "but it does make you different from the man who ordered it. You are not your great-grandfather, but you inherited everything he built through murder. You became the guardian of his lies, even if you did not know they were lies." Minji stepped forward and activated the data cores. Suddenly, the air above, the throne room filled with 3-dimensional images that made many of the watching delegates gasp in horror. They saw human cities burning under orbital bombardment. They watched refugee ships being hunted down and destroyed in the cold emptiness of space. They witnessed human families being torn apart, parents killed while their children screamed. "Every species in this room," Minji announced, her voice steady despite the terrible images surrounding her, benefited from our destruction. Our trade routes run through space that once belonged to human colonies. Our mining operations dig resources from worlds where human children once played. Your prosperity was bought with human blood. The delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Many of them had never heard of humans before the Great Fleet had arrived. Others had thought humans were just stories from old books, mythical beings that had never really existed. Admiral Sung Ho, representing the aquatic thalassans, found his voice first. What do you want from us? Do you want revenge? Do you plan to destroy everything we have built, just as your people were destroyed? Kiwu shook his head slowly. We do not want revenge. We want something our ancestors were never given: truth. We want the galaxy to know what really happened. We want recognition of the crimes that were committed. And we want a promise that such terrible things will never be hidden again. As he spoke, more humans entered the throne room. There were scientists and engineers, teachers and artists, farmers and doctors. They came not as conquerors, but as people, ready to build something new. We give you a choice, Kiwu continued. You can refuse to accept the truth and continue living the comfortable lies your civilization was built on. Or you can join us in creating something better, a true community of worlds based on honest history and real justice. King Doyan looked around the room at the faces of those who had served him faithfully for decades. He saw fear in their eyes and confusion and uncertainty about what would happen next. Then he did something that shocked everyone present, including himself. He knelt down on the polished stone floor. I cannot bring back the dead, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. I cannot undo the terrible things that were done in my family's name, but I can acknowledge the truth. I officially dissolve the great hegemony and give all authority to the representatives of Earth so that real justice can finally be served. Kiwu walked over and gently helped the former king stand up. Justice is not about punishment, he said quietly, so that only Doyan could hear. Justice is about truth, and about promising to never forget that truth. In the months that followed, the galaxy changed rapidly, but peacefully. The humans shared advanced technology that was far beyond anything the hegemony had ever developed. Special memorial worlds were established to honor the human victims of the Great Cleansing. Schools throughout the galaxy began teaching the real history of their civilization, including the dark chapters that had been hidden for so long on Earth. In a great library that preserved the memories of all the humans who had been scattered, across the stars, Keeper Yuna wrote the final entry in the Chronicle of Return. Today, the children of Earth came home. Tomorrow, we will build a galaxy that is worthy of all who live in it. The age of buried secrets and hidden crimes was finally over. The age of truth and remembered justice had begun.